Toki Ampona o Kamapona Sitelen Tawa Pilipu Minijack. So, this is Minijack from my lab in Milan, Italy. We're still under quarantine. Hope you are fine, wherever you are in the world. My heart goes to you, to us all. I think humankind is facing a really tough challenge at the moment. But we're staying strong and we will go through it, I'm sure. At the moment of shooting, it's been almost 50 days, as we decided to shelter in place quite early before the government issued order, as we didn't feel safe. It's not easy. Luckily, I have my lab and almost everything I need here with me where I live. That's my home lab, as I have been outsourcing a lot of industrial processes during last year, and that's coming in very handy right now. So yeah, basically here things go on just a bit slower, as shippings and material and components sourcing is being slowed down by the pandemic, of course. And so just to have a quick tour, I will show you, here is my table where I do all my testing and my research and development, mostly on breadboards and some partly PCB assembled electronics. And here is where final assembly usually goes on, and all the mechanical part of it, basically. I say that it's not all black, of course. We're still here, and one of the enjoyable things here is definitely reduce pollution. As you might know, Milan is one of the most polluted cities, I think, in the world, most definitely the worst in Europe. And now there is really, I mean, I can open my window and it smells like open country. I can almost smell the grass sometimes. And the silence, as traffic is reduced. I hope it will be a lesson for the future. Of course, it's not gonna be fast, but if everybody used electric cars, we could almost have this kind of silence even without all the downsides we are having right now, of course. And yeah, I'm enjoying very much the silence, or more the absence of nagging noise, I would say. And so I'd like to leave you with some music. And now I'll talk a bit about the setup, and then I will play some over a field recording of the current Milan by night urban soundscape, and some nice footage of what I can see out of my window at night. Yup. So let's talk about the idea behind all this, and then I'll talk about the setup that we got here. So it all starts from an ongoing project. It's an hardware project, is this thing. And it is in development and will eventually see the light. But I wanted to try some experiments first. And yeah, puredata is usually my go-to tool for prototyping. And here I have a live. It's S-expression programming language for sequencing. We talk about this one in a moment. And so 1-bit music is basically you can only have the sound on or off. So it's like flipping the switch on and off, not even turning the sound on and off. Just the membrane of the speaker can be in one position or in another position. So that's a square wave, basically. You can do actually a lot of things. The early ZX Spectrum worked like that, this little computer, and it had a buzzer, basically a built-in speaker on the main board, and you can only turn it on and off, so 1 bit. And I think it's very interesting to talk to think in terms of limitation, and it's interesting to see what's possible in such a tight space, much like in this lockdown actually. It's about making the best out of what you have. And for example, Tristan Parrish is a musical artist, wrote an entire symphony on an 80 Tiny 85, which is a chip. Actually, I have one here. It's this one. And he wrote an entire symphony on one of those. It has 8 kilobytes of program memory and 512 bytes of memory. So that's half a kilobyte of RAM. And he could write a symphony. It's like an hour long or 50 minutes, something like that. That's amazing. And we're simulating hardware. So I'm keeping everything in the range 0-1. You can see it from all the oscilloscopes here. We will hear the sounds in a bit. And so there is no -1. I'm just oscillating above the 0, sorry, yeah. That's how microcontrollers work, and that's the reason why also the Spectrum was like that. And not only the Spectrum, of course, a lot of other consoles and devices had to rely on 1-bit sound, or were not even built to emit sound in the first place, like maybe a buzz, which is a square wave. It's all that was intended for them. Yeah, there is a lot of incredible things being done in the demo scene and in the chiptune technoculture. There are lots of techniques like binary impulse trains, pulse width modulation, and really a crap ton of things that I will try. But for today, I chose some things I want to show you. So how it works. Let's hear something. Well, of course I'm cheating. Not everything that is going on here is 1 bit. Just all the sound sources are 1 bit. Then, for example, I'm using filters, which are not 1 bit, and reverbs. Basically, these two things that are modifying the sound in a non-1 bit way. This is alive. It's actually ALV, like that, but it's pronounced alive, and it's like the extension of files, so you write it like that. So what we have going on here, just for this one. Here, this is a very nice language. It is in development, and it takes the same philosophy of puredata, so it's data flow oriented, and so it's a very good match, and of course it brings it to the text coding, and it's very nice to use. I will put a link down in the description. You can download it for all platforms. I think I'm using it on Windows, but it's definitely available for Linux and I think also for macOS. And so what you do, I have a terminal down here, and as you see now I stopped the script, and here in puredata it stopped receiving the data I was sending. So you have this copilot program, and you just stick the name of your file, and it goes on. Every time you modify the file, it will, and you save it, it will trigger a reevaluation of the script. And it's very nice. Main feature is the auto tagging of your expressions, so that when you make a change to the file does not get reevaluated from the beginning, but only the change expression gets reevaluated, so it does not disrupt the flow, the sound flow. So it's very nice for live coding, of course. And I am communicating between with puredata with the OSC protocol. Here I have it in an external file, but the setup is very simple. You decide a port which will be the same in puredata. Here I have this little object I made for myself that sets up the OSC for me. And I also defined a little function. It's very flexible. It takes from the Lisp family of languages, so it's very easy to make macros and redefine expressions. So I just wanted to have a simple OS like OSC send for sending OSC, and everything is taken care of here and there. So I can send, in all these lines, I'm sending data out to puredata, and it's flowing there. And so, for example, on this one, I have two things going on, which is the pitch and the release, which is like the VCA, which gets triggered every time I tell it I want a specific release time. And I can manage them in an async way. So at the moment I have the rate of change. This is the rate of change of the pitch, which is very fast. These are fractions of a second. So 1 means it changes every second. But for example, the release changes every 2 seconds. So now I have this kind of out of phase effect, like if it was 5, I will have, no, sorry, it's here. I have the pitch changing every second, but this one goes on every 5 seconds. Let's put it back like that. Then, if I want a faster pitch change, I am getting this arpeggios. Let's get rid a bit of the reverb here. And so this is a 1-bit sound engine. In this scope here you can see what's coming out of it. And I am controlling the volume via the VCA, the pitch, and here I can also change the octave. So the lower the number, the deeper the sound. I was like, yeah, note. There was an error. Let's see, why is that? Oh yeah, because I accidentally got rid of parents. And yeah, that's usually the joke with Lisp languages, having lots of parentheses. There are some very funny jokes. XKCD did a comic, very funny one, check it out, and maybe I will put it down in the description. And so I was saying, yeah, here I can decide the octave, and I have a filter here, because so this is unfiltered and just a dry signal. So this is purely 1 bit. This is 1 bit. It's still not so bad. So it's sorry. It's very nice and very interesting. Yeah. So it is very powerful to have these two things, async and basically independent. And with the hashtag I can comment lines, so this one is basically not. I can even get rid of that. Then I have a second voice in my song. It's this one. This is heavy filtered. Those cases, also in this one, I have not only a non 1-bit filter, but I am also modulating, for example, let's hear it dry. I am modulating the pulse width, which is a purely 1-bit technique. So for example, if I get rid of that, which is this is receiving an LFO from a live here. Here it's very static now. You can achieve kind of a modulation effect. And here I am limiting my modulation in this range, because where it makes sense. So basically when it's at 50%, it is a pure square wave, so it's controlling the amount of on and off time of our switch. And of course when I approach 0, it's silence, because it's always off, and here is always on, which is the same thing, because our speaker membrane stays still, so cannot make sound. So this sound and this sound are actually very similar and opposite. And so I am modulating just in this range about, and the same for our high part. And I am slowly modulating this one, and this one is a bit faster. So yeah, and here I am also distorting a bit the signal with a tanh function, which is a very nice way of distorting things. It's a mathematical way, so it complies with the same context. And then I have this other thing which I really like. Let's hear it dry. Usual filter here. So what I'm doing here, I am sending a waveform, I call it EF, which is, in this case, it's randomized every half a second, and it's a value between 0 and 255. Decimal numbers between 0 and 255 can be represented with 1 byte. 1 byte is 8 bits, and it is exactly what we have here. Basically, with these couple of cables here, I am dividing the incoming byte in the 8 separate bits, which can be 0 or 1. Of course, as you can see, I am representing here with those lines. A low line is a 0 and a high line is a 1. And you see it's always changing, and I can also manually change it. So for example, the number 240 is represented by 1111000. So that's what I'm getting here. It's actually reversed because I am taking the least significant byte first. And it is a perfect square wave. So now I hear it as a perfect square wave. For example, if I have 1, it's like that. I only have a little tiny bit. So it's a very thin sound. Of course, 255, it's, as we said, it's silenced because it's always 1, the same as 0. It's always 0, but yeah. So with this little patch, yeah, I'm basically scanning the byte very quickly, writing to the table, and then using the table as a waveform. And this will be done in a very different way on hardware, but yeah, it's really nice to be able to experiment with that without further ado. So yeah, and I have a filter here as well, and some more notes. Here you have different beats, and it's something I am doing with the live. So I have a basic beat here, then I'm dividing it in 5, 7, and 3. So I can have different divisions, and it's all in sync because here I'm sending the data, and if I just wrap everything in a do statement, that's how most of Lisps work. Everything gets eval at the same time, so I know that they are in sync. So the waveform is changing in sync with these other bits, which is gating our phase. If I disconnect that, yeah. So this is thirds. And this is fifths. course I can combine more than one to have compound rhythms. So for example, maybe it's clearer if we have this shorter. Yeah, I think I talked about everything. Oh, there is one last thing, which is this little feedback device here. So basically, it's feeding back the output of this reverb through a filter. The filter is tuned with our main pitch. So maybe if I get a more stable, like changing every 2 seconds, it's more noticeable. So I can just manage the amount of feedback, and here the resonant frequency is getting taken care of. It's basically sequenced by a copy of the main pitch. And also I am injecting a little bit of noise, a very low volume noise, to trigger the feedback, because this is a digital. This is a really nice reverb, by the way, but it's all software. So if there is not a starting point, it will not oscillate and will not feedback if there is silence. So I'm also injecting a little bit of noise. And I can move this with this part of code. Let me see, it's this segment here. So I am deciding for how long I want it to move. So it's in milliseconds. So now it's not triggering because it's very silent, but if I put 4 seconds, basically it's... Oh, and there is, I also have this thing. Yeah, it can get very loud, but you get the idea. The longer it stays up, the more there is chance for it to trigger. And this thing is emitting a single impulse, a click, which is 1 bit, whenever it gets triggered from here, and it helps creating noise, and so it feedbacks more easily and quicker. Well, I think that's it. Now I will put some field recording, some ambient noise from the quiet city of Milan, Italy, with a nice Nightscape, and I will play some of this patch for you. If you like this video, hit the like button, and if you're not already, consider subscribing to the channel and stay tuned for more videos. Yampona o Awempona.